I have seen my youngest sister's life almost destroyed by the insistent anxiety, doubt, and stress caused by obsessive compulsive disorder. At times I thought the pain of the obsessive compulsive disorder would not only vanquish my sister, but also my parents. Our entire family was crumbling under its suffocating weight. Today, I would like to tell you a little about obsessive compulsive disorder, from its history, its misconceptions, and its two main elements, which are the obsessions and the compulsions, and the criteria for each of those. In the 17th century, mental illness, including obsessive compulsive disorder, were often regarded as religious hysteria. Obsessive compulsive disorder, also known as OCD, was often misdiagnosed and was once thought to be a rare disorder. Even though it is one of the most common diagnoses given today, there are still many misconceptions about this disorder. Obsessive compulsive disorder has recently been found to outweigh the number of diagnoses in schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, or panic disorder. In the United States, approximately 3.3 million people have obsessive compulsive disorder. Although mostly diagnosed in adults, obsessive compulsive disorder does affect children. Approximately 1% of the youth population is diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder. In adulthood, women and men are equally likely to be diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder. Whereas in the youth population, a diagnosis is more commonly found among males. Obsessive compulsive disorder has long been misdiagnosed, as have many mental illnesses. In the 17th century, mental illnesses, including obsessive compulsive disorder, like I said before, were often regarded as religious hysteria. Radical changes in the concepts began to change in the 19th century, and many psychiatrists began acknowledging the intellectual aspects of obsessive compulsive disorder, as well as distinguishing between compulsions and impulsions, which are not the same. They were starting to understand that a compulsion was not the same thing as being impulsive. Being impulsive, you are able to withhold an action as a result of understanding the consequence, whereas with a compulsion, you are forced to commit an act. During the 18th century, the French and Germans had differing opinions on what obsessive compulsive disorder was. Originally, the French believed obsessive compulsive disorder was a form of partial insanity. Within a decade, this thought was disregarded, and the French replaced the original thought as they attempted to understand obsessions and compulsions within various broad categories. The Germans believed the obsessive compulsive disorder was with paranoia as a disorder of intellect. In the last quarter of the 19th century, thoughts about obsessive compulsive disorder had changed again due to the perspectives of the physicians, and were placed in the diagnostic category of neurasthenia, which was used not only to summarize obsessive compulsive disorder, but also numerous other disorders. Neurasthenia is no longer used as a scientific term, but it was, at that time, regarded as a psychological disorder, loss of memory, and generalized aches and pains, formerly thought to result from exhaustion of the nervous system. As the 20th century opened, both Pierre Janet and Sigmund Freud isolated obsessive-compulsive disorder from neurasthenia and made great strides in better understanding what obsessive-compulsive disorder is today. When discussing obsessive-compulsive disorder, there are two main elements. There is the obsessive part of the disorder and the compulsive part of the disorder. According to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 4th edition, the criteria for obsessions are recurrent and persistent thoughts, impulses, or images that are experienced at some point during the disturbance, as intrusive and inappropriate, and that caused marked anxiety or distress. The thoughts, impulses, or images are not simply excessive worries about real-life problems. The person attempts to ignore or suppress such thoughts, impulses, or images, or to neutralize them with some other thought or action. The person recognizes that the obsessional thoughts, impulses, or images are a product of his or her mind. that is taken directly from the diagnostical manual. Obsessions are irrational thoughts, not worries, about everyday problems that often feel impossible to control, even though the person knows they are irrational. Example fears are listed throughout numerous documents concerning obsessive-compulsive disorder. The obsessions consist of worrying constantly about catching a deadly disease, or that you will contaminate others with your germs, or even fears about contamination with environmental toxins such as lead or radioactivity. Another obsession is an intense fear that something horrible will happen to a loved one, or believing that you may hit someone with your car or injure someone unknowingly. Some suffer from obsessions that cause a consistent worry that one will do something embarrassing, such as yelling out a profanity at a funeral or in church. At the most extreme and detrimental obsessions are aggressive or depraved ideas such as thoughts of murdering a person's partner or child, and terrifying sexual and or religious imagery that might include sexual assault or inappropriate sexual acts. Some obsessions, such as strong mental demand to organize or reorder things so they are correct or perfect in the person's mind, can lead to compulsions. The criteria of compulsions, according to the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 4th edition, states that repetitive behaviors or mental acts that a person feels to perform in response to an obsession or according to rules that must be applied rigidly. The behaviors or mental acts are aimed at preventing or reducing stress or preventing some dreaded event or situation. However, these behaviors or mental acts either are not connected in a realistic way with what they are designed to neutralize, to prevent, or are clearly excessive. Compulsions are repeated behaviors or mental thoughts that are meant to reduce anxiety or distress that goes along with an obsession, or to prevent a feared event or situation. Some common compulsions which are driven from obsessions are hand washing, where a person washes their hands numerous times, compulsively in order to avoid an obsession such as contamination, or that they must wash their hands a certain number of times in order to comply with an obsessional need to do certain things to comply with an internal rule they have made for themselves. Compulsive behavior can have adverse effects on persons, such as washing their hands until they are raw. Another compulsion is checking. A person may feel an obsession that requires them to check a lock on a door repeatedly due to an obsession with the fear of a stranger coming into their home and causing bodily harm. This compulsion can lead to a person checking their door numerous times in a matter of minutes, preventing them from accomplishing anything else. As stated before, another type of obsession which can lead to compulsive disorder is organizing and reordering of possessions. This leads into compulsions of having a home or workspace being extremely clean and oftentimes being labeled and organized to the point of perfection. Many aspects of their homes have to be symmetrical. There is obsession with color schemes, heights of furniture, organization of magazines, books, and even items that are hidden in cabinets. Some compulsions go from one extreme to the other. For example, there are some who suffer from obsessive-compulsive disorder who are obsessed with the lack of clutter and organization in their homes, where on the other side of the spectrum there are those who have an issue of hoarding, where they are compulsively shop, collect, or store food and other items in their home to where it takes over the ability to live in acceptable standards according to society. Although there currently is no cure for obsessive-compulsive disorder, there are two main treatments that have lessened the symptoms of the disorder. The most effective and common treatment for obsessive-compulsive disorder is said to be cognitive behavioral therapy. When a person is exposed to their obsession and then asked to avoid the compulsive behavior they would normally perform to reduce the anxiety, so that they sit with their anxiety, their urge to perform their compulsion behavior fades. This way, the person learns that they don't need the driven behavior to subside the anxiety, and that the person actually has control over their obsessive thoughts and behaviors. Antidepressants sometimes accompany cognitive behavior therapy, but is not usually used solely to treat the disorder. Many times, obsessive-compulsive disorder is not noticed by the public eye. For many who suffer from this disorder, they do so silently. There are those who remain silent for fear of looking as if they are crazy, and there are those who remain silent due to being embarrassed for having the lack of control, which causes them to succumb to their obsessions and their compulsions. Although they have these obsessions and compulsions, many do realize they are not rational or normal. The ones who do not realize this is not normal or rational are those who are diagnosed as children, for they do not have the intellect to differentiate between social norms and their disorder. Obsessive-compulsive disorder is a very serious and at many times debilitating disorder which affects every aspect of a person's life. Many can function, but not to a complete level of normalcy. More education and information should be given to inform not only those who suffer from the disorder, but those around, so they can have a better understanding of the ramifications of this disorder. For obsession-compulsive disorder is very real. Thank you.